Now, the reason that this one went well when the other one went so badly was just because I was kind and I was gentle, and instead of rushing ahead, I remembered I'm sketching. I'm sketching loose, and I'm just trying to have a bit of fun. So we're going to have a load of fun sketching this scene. This is Glacier Los Perros in Chile on the O track in Patagonia. And what we've got is a sort of fascinating, slightly scary scape, a mountainscape. We're going to do it in ink and watercolours. So I've got my fountain pen, I've got carbon ink. This is waterproof ink in my fountain pen. And it's got an extra fine nib on it. I've also got a couple of brushes. I've got a size 2 mop, quite a big brush, and I've got a size 6 round brush. And all of this is in my watercolour sketchbook by Moleskine. And let's just see what happens when we break this down into just really 3 simple steps. So we're going to do ink, colour, finishing touches. And my approach to this kind of scene is to be quite, well, loose. You knew that already, but a little bit abstract and a little bit focusing on the big shapes, but not over focusing, and focusing on the important colours, but not over focusing, letting them be free and loose. So let's see what that means in practice. So I'm going to start by really gently, delicately trying to get the idea of this key silhouette in. So this key silhouette, we're focusing on the shape. So we've got like a triangle, but we're also focusing on the textures. So we've got a series of triangles forming this sort of key silhouette to start with, but they're triangles with texture going sort of jagged up and down. Into the back, we've got the tallest part of this, which is just another triangle, going up like so, and then coming down, and then basically flattening out before steeply rising over here and coming off to the edge of the page. So we've kind of got one layer there. We've got this middle layer. We can do the background as well. So in the background, we've got this kind of much more up and down series again of just series of triangles. And then it gets lost in the mist. It comes down and it gets lost in the mist. Then we get this kind of here before it gets lost in the mist. And we can just lose it in the mist by just letting our brush, our pen rather, stop touching the paper and just gently leaving it be. Then we got this kind of foreground, middle ground layer of lake that just comes round. Again, it's got texture, so it's got this kind of up and down feel, especially into the distance. And it comes to something which is much more in the foreground, this little ridge here, which we can just get in again, just focusing a little bit on those textures. And then the real foreground is the front of the lake. And again, I'm just trying to suggest the idea of rocks with these little loops. And it disappears off into the edge. So what we've got these sort of abstract layers of different parts of the scene. And what we want to do is now separate them. So I'm going to do something really simple. With the background layer, I'm going to do some just vertical lines. And that shows us that even when we've lost it into the cloud, this is still all the same layer, and it's also pushes it away from what's in front of it. Then what have we got in front? Now we can come back and we can start adding even more texture. So just being really nice and gentle still, we can start suggesting some of those little shapes. And the little shapes are those areas where you've got deep shadow. So for example, look here, got this kind of triangle of deep shadow. And it's got these up and down areas again. And all we're doing is we're just taking what we did before, just clarifying it, enhancing it, making it a little bolder. And a little bit of boldness, what that does is it brings it forward. So it brings it in front, again, in front of that gently hatched out area. And so we just come up and we can just leave it there, because as we get out we want less and less clarity. Now, what else have we got to add? Well, look at these shapes. Look how we've got all these lines which flow down. So being really careful to be very gentle, we can create these lines which can then start capturing the kind of other feel of the scene, the kind of flowing perspective of the scene, and just outlining these larger areas. So this is all just part of the same process of identifying within our scene structures, like we would identify houses, but this time we're identifying how the rock is structured. Come to the foreground, and what we want to do, probably press it a little bit heavier so that we get an even bolder line, which then comes even more into the foreground. And just suggest those textures and how it interacts with the water with these little linking lines. And do we need anything else? Not at the moment. I think at the moment we can call that step 1 done. And it didn't take so long, did it? Maybe about 5 minutes. Now step 2 is where we start playing with our colours. So what we're going to do is have really flowing colours. And we're just going to start in this sort of sky. Look how it's all moody and grumpy and a bit ominous. Well, that's what Moonglow was made for. Equally, you could use like a Payne's grey, or you could mix a nice burnt umber with a ultramarine or something like that, just to get that kind of moody two-toned feel. And then just drop in a few bits of colour here and there. And that's just going to do its own thing. I've got the paper on a slight tilt so that the colours blend and bloom and merge. Coming down, we've got this glacier here. So let's get those same colours, because the glacier is basically reflecting the sky. And as well as those same colours, I'm just going to get a little bit of a cobalt blue in there and let that blend and bloom, and then just suggest that it links down into our glacier. I'm going to pop also a little bit of that bold phthalo blue into our lake. So now we've got this gradual progression of neutralish blues through down to bright and punchy blues. What we might want to do is just clean it up at this point. So I'm going to just pull out a bit of colour from these distant hills, but leaving that soft edge at the top. And what that does is it lets the feeling of the clouds interact with that layer. And then I'm going to come in with some other colours. So I'm going to use a few bits here. I'm going to use, well, I say a few, I'm just going to use probably 2. I'm going to use a bit of Perylin Violet, and I'm going to use a bit of Sepia. So a nice sort of slightly warm purple, basically, with quite a neutralish brown. And we're just going to use those colours to link around and flow around our mountains. What we've got is quite delicate line work in there, so we don't want to overdo it. We just want the lovely structure from our line work to sing through. So just having these little touches of colour to just show a little bit more about what's going on. Nothing much more than that. In the back, we can then start just enhancing the feel of these ridges. So this is now a more intense bit of sepia, which hopefully just enhances the deep darkness that we can actually see along those ridge lines. And let that colour flow perhaps into the lake, just pull it across. And if we're not happy with quite how that's moving, we can push it around and make it softer and blend a little more. And that's why we paint nice and wet, so that we can keep moving and manipulating things. What else might we want? We might want to just simulate a little bit of warmth. It's not really there in the image, but that's fine. So let's just take something like a quinacridone, and we can just start finding areas we want to sing a little more. And look, if we just drop that in and see what happens. And we can especially do that maybe in the foreground to suggest some areas of rocks or things where there's little reflections just coming off. Maybe just behind this area we've currently got as a bit of negative space. And you know what? Maybe we want to leave that as a little bit of negative space as well. And I think that is probably step 2 done. Maybe just a couple of splashes, something to inject some randomness. Maybe same in the sky, just a little splash or 5 of colour. See what happens, and then we can let it dry off, and we can see how we can finish off this very quick and sort of semi-abstract, but very much based in reality, landscape sketch. So we are back, and we're at this point nice and dry. And what we can do now is those final touches. So we're going to do perhaps a little bit more ink, followed by a little bit more watercolour. So what are we going to do now with the ink? Well, the shapes are still really there, but what we can do is perhaps find a few little sort of areas of shadow. So we can see that there's quite a lot of shadow coming down in the middle of here. And we just want to find a few of these deeply shadowed areas. Just pop them in really, just really gently suggest them. Where else have we got some shadow? We've got some shadow coming down here as well. And just little fine hatches. And this is fairly optional. I just want to see really what happens when we bring out some of these little areas. Having done this, actually, I'm thinking, you know what, it might help to just structure these sort of areas of shadow as well. So why don't we just pop in a little shape around our little areas of hatching. We can come down in and just enhance a couple of other lines, just being really delicate. We don't want to overdo the pen. Having got these lovely delicate colours, we don't want to suddenly make the colours feel like they've been overwhelmed. So just really gently does it. Now the thing about having put watercolour on the paper, it means that actually the ink naturally is much bolder. Just I think because the water itself changes the sort of absorbency of the paper. So this is why we need to be especially delicate and avoid overdoing anything at this stage. A couple more touches of hatching coming down here, just to use these shapes as areas of contrast. Just enhances the idea that they are indeed shapes. They are indeed sort of natural rocky outcroppings in this interesting landscape, this mountainscape. I don't know if you can hear, but we've got a little thunderstorm going on, which I think is probably very appropriate for sketching this kind of scene, isn't it? Have a little thunderstorm going on in the background. Just going to add tiny touches of texture into our little lake, and then find some of these shapes that we've made and just turn them into ink shapes in the foreground. Little rocks, perhaps, little shapes. You can add shadow to the rocks. Just little suggestions more than anything of there being something going on in the foreground. It's not just a blank space. Just gently does it though, gently does it. And I think that's enough. That's enough now for me, for the ink. What I'm going to do is just enhance some of these areas where we've had a bit of fun. So I'm just going to take my mix of Perylene Violet and Sepia and find these darker shapes and just basically apply that darker colour. And if we just pop that around, change a bit between how much sepia, how much Perylene there is, and just pop it around in these dark areas, then come back, clean the brush off, a little bit of dryness to it, we can soften those shapes. So you see how we just take these hard edges and then we can soften them up. And when we soften them, we just make it a bit more natural. We stop sort of having it just immediately point our eye to these dark shapes. Instead, they're just sort of gently suggested as little areas of shadow. And that's what we're doing. We're not being like realistic. We're being, as we said, semi-abstract. We're just taking hints from our scene and trying to just find ways of expressing it with really simple watercolours and really simple line work. Now it's not easy. It's something which can often be very easy to overdo. Very easy to overdo. This is, I'll show you at the end actually, this is my second attempt at this scene, and the first one, oh my word, did I overdo it. And I was trying so hard and it just, I filmed the whole thing actually, and it just kept getting more and more overworked. I want to show you though, after this, so if you stay around for the end, I'll show you, my version of an overworked scene, and you can let me know what you think of this one versus the one I didn't bother showing you the whole video of, but I'm more than happy to show you my failures as well as my successes. So I'll be very interested to hear what you guys think when I show you what I mean by having gone too far, having tried too hard and ended up just the wrong side of happy, the wrong side of like a clean, nice scene. But I hope that you can get the feel here, just from these delicate colours, just gradually building little bit up in this last of the 3 steps. So these delicate colours actually are the way to go for a simple line and wash in terms of a landscape, just keeping it nice and delicate. Anything else we can do, look, let's just take this blue, tiny bit of blue, this is phthalo blue, and just a few little splashes. A few little splashes in the sky as well. Maybe a little bit of that perylene violet in the sky as well. And there we go. That is my scene done. And this time, I hope, not overworked. I think this one I'm much happier with. What I've done is I've learnt from my mistakes. And I've just gone, you know what? I tried too hard in the previous one. So look, this is my finished version. It's Los Perros in Patagonia in Chile, part of the O-Track, a really lovely place to go if you get the chance. This is my happy version, and then over the page you can see the version which didn't go so well. And what's the difference? If you look, the difference really is the saturation, the level of colour I've put down, the level of ink. I wasn't gentle, and also I'm too zoomed in. So if you look here, I've zoomed everything out, and here I've zoomed in. Here I've got this lovely blue, and here I've got this dense, powerful blue. Here I've got this subtle background, and here I've got an attempt at subtlety. It just didn't quite work. Now this is okay. I'm not saying this is terrible, but this one makes me happy. And that's what art's about. So learn from things when they don't go so well, and then work out, you know, if you want to have another go, how you can have another go. Feel good about yourself and just develop and craft your own style as you move forward. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed that. A really quite simple 3-step process for how to develop your sort of urban sketching skills or your line and wash skills and apply them to a lovely landscape as far from urban as you can be. If you enjoyed it, let me know. Leave a comment, like, subscribe. It's a huge support to my little channel if you do want to subscribe. But most importantly, go out there or stay in and sketch, have fun and be creative. Thanks for watching. So thank you everyone for watching my little sketching videos. If you enjoy my content, please do subscribe to my channel because it makes me really, really happy. Thanks again.